You need to know how to handle the tantrum in order to prevent them from happening more often. Because if you handle it correctly and they become less effective, they will crop up less. It's just as simple as that. Because if they're not getting the result from the tantrum, then they won't do them. So the first thing that you must always do is remain calm and non-communicative as much as you possibly can, because that really takes the wind out of their sails. Because often a tantrum, especially with older children, they want the reaction, especially if they do them in public. Am I going to get what I want? Because mum or dad's not going to want me to play up now because they're just going to give me what I want in order to shut me up. The older they get, the more crafty they're going to become with the tantrum. When they're younger, they genuinely are overwhelmed with this emotion of anger and frustration. They don't have the vocabulary or the necessary skills in order to express themselves. But as they get older, they certainly can develop those skills. But if they're getting what they want because you are negotiating with them or you are interacting with them when they have a tantrum, they will continue to do so. So stay calm, take a deep breath and disengage. If need be, sit down, read a magazine. Don't constantly look at the child. Just act as if it's not happening. You must ensure that they are safe and you need to make sure that they can't hurt themselves, but do not engage. Don't leave them on their own either. I don't want you to leave the room. That is not a good idea. But just make it very clear that you are not interested in that behaviour whatsoever. As long as your child is safe, you can just leave them be until the tantrum is over. And if they try and negotiate with you, just not interested. Just say, no, we're not talking, not while this behaviour is going on. So when the tantrum is over, now is the time to have a chat about it. You have a quiet chat, go to the quiet corner, sit down, give them lots of love and comfort because they will be exhausted by the tantrum, most definitely. They will need your love and support, so you must never, ever punish. Do not punish a tantrum. That's not what it's all about. They're not doing it to hurt you, and they don't deserve to be punished for it. What they do need is guidance how to cope with those emotions that they're experiencing. So sit them down, have a cuddle, have a chat about how they were feeling. Acknowledge the fact that you understood that they were frustrated or angry. Always acknowledge their feelings. And then talk about how they could have behaved that would not have resulted in a tantrum, how they could have had a discussion about it, or how we could have talked about, or they could have told you how they were feeling. If your children are struggling with voicing their emotions, there's really helpful flashcards you can use, which are great for 3-year-olds, that helps them learn to give words to the emotions that they're feeling. I'm always a great lover in using books that talk about emotions or have characters in them that are dealing with difficult emotions that your child can identify with. Use them throughout the day or at bedtime to promote conversations about feelings of anger, frustration, and not getting their own way, so that you open some form of dialogue about it and that you ensure that you are giving your child the tools they need in order to express themselves in an alternative way than just having a tantrum. So you've probably heard me talk before about quiet corners. I am a great believer in quiet corners. And I think that a quiet corner is something very precious in a household, and it's really useful for young children. In this hectic society in which we live in now, a quiet corner can be a saving grace for everybody. You can make them as grand or as simple as you want, depending on your space and your circumstances. So you can build a little teepee in the corner of a room where you can put soft curtains, little twinkly lights, and you can put favourite soft toys in there where they can listen to some music or they can look at their favourite books. Somewhere where you can join them there as well, because it can be a lovely bonding experience for you to share the quiet corner. And you can teach your child that when they can feel those emotions coming, suggest that maybe they would like to go to the quiet corner for a bit and just calm down. Then when they're ready to talk, they can come out and you can have a talk about what it is that they want. And as your children grow, a quiet corner can be a part of the household and a safe place for everybody. So you can start introducing a quiet corner as young as a 1-year-old. And by the time your child is 5, it's going to be one of their favourite places to go to. Another great thing to teach your youngster is to do teddy bear breathing. You know, if you're getting het up and you say breathe, and I always say to parents if they're about to feel like they're going to lose it or get angry, I say, take a breath, take a breath. If you could teach your children to do that, it really can take the heat out of the emotion at the time. So if you teach them teddy bear breathing at bedtime or before nap time, it really can give them a tool. So you can say to them, let's do some teddy bear breathing. And you'd be surprised how it can just break through that potential tantrum environment. Another important thing for across the ages, but especially at this age, is to encourage good listening and to lead by example. Your children need to feel heard. A child that is felt heard is less likely to act out. And it means you have to have the patience, yes, and you need to engage. Don't give instructions across the top of your child's head. Get down to their level, make eye contact, and if they're old enough and they have the vocabulary, ask them to repeat back to you what you've asked them to do. Make sure that they understand what is required of them. So many tantrums that I have seen are due to bad communication. You thought they understood what you wanted, but they probably didn't. You need to really be satisfied yourself that your child was completely aware of what you wanted them to do. And now your 3-year-old really needs to know that the emotions that they are feeling are normal. So you have to be very empathetic to what their feelings were. You have to acknowledge them and you have to say, you understand how that feels. You can even tell them of examples when you were frustrated and you felt angry and show them how you behaved in order to deal with that. And I will say it again, use flashcards, use books, use all those tools that you possibly can to encourage your child to talk about their feelings. It'll give you an insight into what they're having to deal with as well, once they can start to talk about it. Because you might have just missed that there were certain things that were happening that were upsetting them that you probably didn't know. And the more words you can give them to use to describe how they're feeling, the better you can understand what's likely to trigger them and how to divert it from happening. It's also really important that you praise their good behavior. So when they do manage their emotions successfully, always praise it. Say, gosh, I know how hard that must have been. You were really frustrated, but it was so brilliant what you did. And just really make sure that you reinforce their good behavior. Because so often as parents, we're really quick at criticizing and telling them off when they do something wrong. We have to really reinforce the good behavior. And I don't mean by just saying, oh, good job, thank you, because that can get too flippant. Word it out, actually say it. Gosh, I knew you were frustrated. I could see you were angry, but you did X, Y, and Z so well. And that was brilliant. And so that they understand that this gets a positive response from you. Whereas throwing a tantrum gets no response whatsoever. And I'm very careful to say no response, not a negative response, because we're not punishing and we're not chastising, we're not blaming. You're not going to get angry. You're just going to say, that's it. You also need to understand that at this age, and I'm always going on about age-appropriate sleep, is the fact that if you have got a tired or hungry 3-year-old, they are more likely to throw a tantrum no matter what else you do. So you need to make sure that that foundation is there in the first place, because all rationale goes out the window, despite all the skills you've given them. If they are really tired or overtired, or they are hungry, the chances are, there's a very high chance that they might throw a tantrum. So keep on top of that sleep. Know how much age-appropriate sleep your child needs and make sure that they are getting it. And if they are tired or hungry, make allowances and make sure that you are paying close attention so that things do not escalate out of control. So let's just briefly talk about the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown so that you can pick up on what is happening. A tantrum is usually goal-driven. So the trigger will be usually they were unable to do something either for themselves or you'd stop them from doing something, or they were angry because you'd said no to something. They want something and they're not getting what they want, so they decide to throw a tantrum. They also will last relatively shortly, 10 to 15 minutes. And during that time, they will try and negotiate with you. They will keep an eye on you. They will be in control of the tantrum, really. They might stop, see if it's working, carry on again. I mean, you won't get the impression that they are totally disengaged at all. They will usually stop as soon as they get what they want, if you have given in. Once they're over it, they're over it. They usually recover relatively quickly. Alternatively to this, a meltdown is actually due to a sensory overload, not having a meltdown because you said no to something. Something else will have triggered it. They are disengaged during a meltdown. They won't want to talk to you. You will find it hard to communicate with them. It can usually last longer than a tantrum, and it takes them longer to calm down, and they can often be very subdued afterwards. Whereas after a tantrum, they tend to be quite chatty and just get back to it. So that's the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. And you have to keep an eye on this, because if your child is having lots of meltdowns due to sensory overload, you might want to go and consult with a pediatrician just to make sure that there's not something else going on, that they're having difficulty just coping with things. So the good news is that if your child is still throwing tantrums at 3, it's not unusual. And there are lots of things that you can do to prevent them from happening. And when they do happen, to ensure that they're short-lived. Accept the fact they are normal. When they do happen, Be as disengaged as you possibly can, and do never, never, never give in. Please don't give in, because if they work, then your toddler will continue to have them. And finally, really concentrate on communication and teaching your child how to express themselves. If you can teach your child how to communicate and express their feelings, and you can engage with them and they can feel listened to and they can feel heard, and you have this great back and forth going on between you, it really will help you with so many of the behavioural issues that you will encounter in the early years. And of course, like, comment and subscribe, because we always want to hear what you're thinking. And if there's any subjects that you'd like me to cover, please let me know, because I'm happy to talk about anything that's early years related. Thank you.